Hi, ArcfieldWeather.com meteorologist Paul Doreen here on Thursday morning, November the 30th, the last day of the month of November. The Arctic blast that moved into the mid-Atlantic region of the northeast U.S. earlier this week will modify noticeably this afternoon. Temperatures climbing back towards the upper 40s, lower 50s, places like D.C., Philadelphia, New York City. It stays milder during the upcoming weekend. Looks like there could be a couple of chances for rain. Again in the northeastern quadrant of the nation later tomorrow night, and again over the upcoming weekend. Basically kind of a back and forth temperature pattern over the next week to 10 days or so throughout the central and eastern states. A few days of colder than normal, a few days of warmer than normal, nothing too sustained as of yet. There's a clipper system we'll talk about over the next couple of minutes that will drop from Canada into the northern states. We'll have to monitor that over the next few days. It could cause a little bit of snow by the middle part of next week across the Great Lakes, maybe into the mid-Atlantic, northeast U.S. It doesn't look like it'll have much moisture with it, but again, it's something we'll monitor over the next few days. I thought we'd start off the video discussion with a couple of non-weather related items here, weather related but not looking at the weather maps. First of all, on the sun, it's been quite an active time on the sun with a lot of sunspots. This current solar cycle is climbing towards a maximum phase that could very well occur during next year, during 2024. There was a coronal mass ejection a couple of days ago. That was followed by a second coronal mass ejection. This is a particular model that the Space Prediction Center runs that shows that the second coronal mass ejection may actually catch up to the first one, what they call a Cannibal, CME, coronal mass ejection. Certainly can result in some northern lights later on tonight, into the day tomorrow night across the northern latitudes and maybe even down into the middle latitudes. It'll be quite a geomagnetic storm. This is the particular model representing the sun, and here's that initial coronal mass ejection right here, followed by a second one that moves fast enough that it kind of catches up, and the Earth is represented by this little blue dot right here. These other circles represent solar spacecraft on either side of the Earth. And again, coronal mass ejection will reach the Earth's upper atmosphere on December 1st. Right here, you can see that second one catching up to the first one and hitting the Earth. Again, it could have an impact on communications, could cause some northern lights all the way down in the middle latitudes tonight, through the day tomorrow and into tomorrow night. So again, this is of interest, something to watch for. Pretty strong geomagnetic storm. Well, speaking of the Earth's upper atmosphere, we've been talking about a stratospheric warming event that will take place, kind of underway already. And this is a particular map that we've shown here before at arcfieldweather.com that shows the temperature pattern at the stratospheric level of 10 millibars, way up at the top part of the atmosphere. The U.S. is positioned right here. This circle right in this region represents the North Pole. Typically, this time of the year you have what we call a polar vortex sitting at or near the North Pole. Now, this can be broken up, this can be displaced by what we call a stratospheric warming event, where there's sudden warming. The air's still really cold, but warmer relative to surrounding air. Stratospheric warming can move towards the polar region and cause, again, a breaking apart of the polar vortex or displacement, let's say down into Canada. And that increases the chance for cold air outbreaks into the central and eastern U.S. There's no guarantee that that would happen in the central and eastern U.S. It could be a cold air outbreak into the western U.S. or even onto the other side of the pole. But a stratospheric warming event does, in general, raise the chances for cold air outbreaks to make their way from the higher latitudes into the middle latitudes. Indeed, it looks like we're going to experience a stratospheric warming event over the next couple of weeks. Sometimes there's a lag in the impact in the middle latitudes, so this stratospheric warming event over, let's say, the next couple of weeks could have an impact in terms of cold air outbreaks, or more frequent cold air outbreaks into the central and eastern U.S., let's say later in December, going all the way into the month of January. Here is the current look at the temperature pattern. Again, kind of a conventional, kind of a typical polar vortex. Go out 5 days from now, and here is the representation of that warming in the stratospheric level. And you notice the polar vortex kind of shifts a little bit from near the pole, a little bit away from the pole. And this is just a forecast map for 5 days from now in terms of the temperature pattern. So indeed, there is a stratospheric warming event that is underway, and it could have an impact on the winter weather conditions in the central and eastern U.S. later in the month of December, going all the way into January. By the way, I mentioned this the other day, at the arcfieldweather.com website, we have a page called Meteorology 101. I have an in-depth video discussion on stratospheric warming that, if you're interested in this atmospheric phenomenon, certainly go to that page, Meteorology 101. Those prior couple of maps of the temperature pattern at 10 millibars were from the ensemble run of the GFS. This is another way to look at stratospheric warming. This actually comes from the European model, and what we have here is the timeline down in this fashion here. So this particular position of this kind of a plot is all the way at the beginning of January, and what we're looking at, basically the winds at that 10 millibar altitude, way up in the atmosphere, the stratospheric level. And when winds get weaker, that part of the atmosphere, that kind of is indicative of a weakening polar vortex. And by that I mean it weakens, breaks apart, or perhaps shifts away from the pole into closer towards the middle latitudes, let's say southern Canada for an example. And all the blue lines here represent individual ensemble runs of the European model, of which there are numerous, as many as 50 different runs of, again, we're looking at the winds at the stratospheric level. The thick blue line represents the mean of all those thin blue lines, all those ensemble runs. And as we go out in time, the general trend is for a weakening of the winds, and that is kind of confirmation from this particular model that indeed that polar vortex will weaken as we go out through the month of December and even into January. Again, this is January 2nd right here at this particular time, January 9th. The red lines here kind of represent outer bounds, the extreme bounds here. This is the 10th percentile line here and the 90th percentile line here. So this is indeed moving into kind of rare territory here in terms of the winds, what we call the zonal winds at that stratospheric level. Another confirming model run that shows indeed that polar vortex looks like it'll weaken as we go through the month of December. And again, that increases the chance for cold air outbreaks to make their way from the high latitudes into the middle latitudes. So if you're a snow lover or a cold lover in the central or eastern U.S., this is a favorable sign here when you see a confirmation of a stratospheric warming event. Well, let's wrap up by looking at the European model run. This is last night's conventional run of the European model. We're sticking with the European model theme here today, and that's prior map was again the forecast of the winds by the European model at the stratospheric 10 millibar level. This is as we begin the day here on Thursday, November 30th. Finally, some modification in the Arctic air mass sitting over the mid-Atlantic region as that high pressure has shifted off to eastern seaboard. We'll have kind of a low-level flow of southwesterly air into D.C., Philadelphia, New York City. Temperatures do modify this afternoon, really only back to normal levels for this time of the year. And then we'll move forward here. We'll see we have a possibility of some rain later tomorrow. This is the forecast map for mid-morning, midday on Friday. Low pressure pushes up to the north and west of the I-95 corridor region towards the Great Lakes, and it'll spread some rain into the mid-Atlantic region during the day tomorrow. Maybe some snow up across higher elevations of interior New England here. All the precipitation on this particular set of maps shown in green. So we're not seeing the snow here. We're not seeing the blue that we see with the other models here, this particular set of maps from tropicaltidbits.com. But nonetheless, certainly in the I-95 corridor region, this would fall in the form of rain later tomorrow into tomorrow night. Then we'll go forward here, and basically a milder weekend, probably highs in the 50s, although there'll be lots of clouds around. I'm talking about highs in the 50s across DC, Philadelphia, New York City. This is Saturday. Additional low pressure areas to the south may bring additional rain to the Mid-Atlantic region later this week, and maybe Saturday night, off and on Sunday, as yet another low pressure area moves on. Maybe 2 or 3 low pressure areas to deal with. This is now this Sunday evening forecast map. There's a little bit more of interest because there's some colder air moving in across the Midwest. Certainly could be some snow out of this by Sunday night, early Monday across the eastern Ohio Valley, and then that moves on by, and kind of a cold shot. Again, generally a back and forth pattern in temperatures across the central and eastern U.S. Let's say the next 7 to 10 days or so. No sustained real cold air as of yet. Things get more interesting, I think, as we get maybe into the following week, closer towards the middle part of December. And now here we are by Monday evening, and here's a clipper system. Again, relatively moisture-starved system, but there's a decent amount of cold air ahead of it and associated with it, and we'll have to monitor that. That drops to the south and east, and here we are all the way into midday on Tuesday. And much of this can be in the form of snow, but only on the light side. Again, kind of relatively moisture-starved clipper type of system that drops from way up there in Canada, Saskatchewan, or wherever it originated, pushes along fairly quickly across the northern jet stream, across the northern U.S. Relatively moisture starved, but again, something we'll monitor over the next few days. And it does push into the Mid-Atlantic region. By the time we get to, let's say, middle of next week, this could be cold enough for some snow. Again, remember, we're not seeing blue here that shows you snow. The green is all kinds, any kind of precipitation here. But remember, we pointed out this 540 thickness line is often kind of a rain-snow line here. Well, indeed, that would be cold enough for some snow, perhaps across the Mid-Atlantic region by the middle part of next week, again, from that clipper system that we'll monitor over the next few days. So an active sun, we have a potential northern lights event coming tonight, tomorrow night. Communication problems may develop as a result of this so-called Cannibal coronal mass ejection. Again, there was an initial eruption on the sun followed by a second one. That second one, all those particles will catch up to the first one and cause some potential problems tonight, tomorrow night in terms of communication. And again, northern lights, a possibility all the way down to the mid-latitudes. Stratospheric warming event continues to unfold. It looks like it'll continue over the next couple of weeks. Could have an impact on the winter weather across the central and eastern states later in December and even going into the month of January. And again, we'll monitor a progression of a clipper type of system that could reach the Mid-Atlantic region by the middle part of next week. That's it for now. For ArcfieldWeather.com, this has been meteorologist Paul Dorian.